Okay, so this is standard number 12, which is going to be writing an equation in the slope-intercept form when you are given 2 points. So let me get this in focus. Okay, so as we already know, these 2 points are known as solutions to the equation that we are going to write. These are known as solutions to the equation we're going to write because these 2 points are both on the line for the equation we're about to write. Okay, so since these two are known as solutions, I can use them to generate the equation. So the first thing that we need to do is realize that for this standard, we're writing an equation in the slope-intercept form, which is y equals mx plus b. When we write an equation in the form y equals mx plus b, the slope-intercept form, we need two numbers. We need a number for m and we need a number for b. Well, as we already learned in one of the prior standards, you can calculate the slope that passes through 2 points by realizing that the slope, which is the change in y over the change in x, and change means to subtract numbers, so we've got y sub 2 minus y sub 1 divided by x sub 2 minus x sub 1. Right? The y is in the numerator because that's the rise, the up and down part, and the x's are in the denominator because that's the run, that's the left and right part. So we've got xy, we have xy, we have 1s, we have 2s. So all I need to do is substitute my values in and calculate my slope. So y sub 2 is negative 1. Minus, because it's part of the formula, and then y sub 1 is 5. So this gives us negative 1 minus 5 divided by x sub 2 is 0 minus 4. Okay, that's going to give us a slope of negative 1 minus 5 is negative 6 over negative 4. A negative divided by a negative is positive, and if I simplify that, right, because they're both divisible by 2, I'm going to get 3/2. So the slope is 3/2. All right, that gives me one of my pieces of information, but I also need to find this piece of information. So you write down what you have so far. So far we have m, and that gives us y equals 3/2 x plus b. Now we need to solve for b. Well, we can't solve for b unless we have numbers for x and y. And luckily, we do have numbers for x and y. In fact, we have a choice. We can use these x and y values, or we can use these x and y values. If I use this one, then y will become 5 and x will become 4. So if I use 4 comma 5, I would get 5 equals 3/2 times 4 plus b. And we know that 4 comma 5 is on the line we're trying to write the equation for. 4 comma 5 is a solution. So what we need to do is figure out the value for b so that when we use 4 comma 5, this will come out, these two sides will come out to being equivalent. We find out what value of b will make that true or make that happen. So 3/2 times 4 is 6. Then I subtract 6 from both sides and I get b equals negative 1. Okay, so this is not the final answer, nor is this. These are just the two pieces you need in order to write the final answer, because the final answer has to be in the form y equals mx plus b. So now we put it all together. Y equals mx plus b. Y, which is called the output or the dependent variable, equals the slope, which we already figured out was 3/2, times x, which is the independent variable or the input, plus b, which in this case is negative 1. Okay, now we're going to do everything a few more times. We're going to have, first thing we have y equals mx plus b. Oh, what happened to my little box? There it is. Okay. Okay, so we have y equals mx plus b. We need to find out what m and b are. So I'm going to figure out m. I've got m equals y sub 2 minus y sub 1 divided by x sub 2 minus x sub 1. This is xy, this is xy. These are the 1s, these are the 2s. I'm going to have y sub 2 minus y sub 1, negative 4 minus 2, divided by 3 minus, right, from the formula, 3 minus whatever this number is, which is negative 3. 3 minus negative 3. Negative 4 minus 2 is negative 6. 3 minus negative 3, when you subtract a negative, you are really adding the values together. And so the slope is equal to negative 1. Now I substitute that into the equation that I have so far. Y equals negative 1x plus b. And I need to solve for b. In order to solve for b, I need numbers for x and y. Oh, lovely. Some numbers for x and y. You can use these or you can use these, but don't use both. If you use both, you end up with the exact same thing. Just the simple equation that you're trying to come up with. So I have y sub 1 is 2 equals negative 1 times x sub 1, which is negative 3, plus b. 2 equals, that's a positive 3 plus b. Subtract 3 from both sides. I get b equals negative 1. I'm looking for y equals mx plus b. That's the slope-intercept form. I figured out that m was negative 1 and that b is negative 1. And there's the final answer, the equation for the line that we're coming up with. All right, number 3, y equals mx plus b. M is the change in y over the change in x, which is equal to y sub 2 minus y sub 1 divided by x sub 2 minus x sub 1. I've got an x and a y, an x and a y. These are 1s, these are 2s. So I have negative 2 minus 5 divided by 1 minus negative 2. Negative 2 minus 5 is negative 7. 1 minus negative 2, when you subtract a negative, it's really adding, so that becomes 3. What that gives me so far is y equals negative 7/3 x plus b. Now I need to put numbers in for x and y. So I have a y value that is 5, and I have an x value that is negative 2. And since negative 2 comma 5 is the solution, I can use that to figure out what b is. So this is going to give me 5 equals negative 7 times negative 2 is positive 14/3 plus b. I'm going to subtract 14/3 from both sides. Okay, 5 rewritten as a fraction with the denominator of 3 is going to be 15/3 minus 14/3. That's going to give me 1/3. That is what b equals, 1/3. Okay, so putting it all together, I have y equals mx plus b. I have y equals, my value of m was negative 7/3. Don't forget your x, and my b value was 1/3. And there's what we're coming up with. Okay, number 4. I have m equals y sub 2 minus y sub 1 divided by x sub 2 minus x sub 1. I have xy, I have x, y. I have my 1s, I have my 2s. So I'm going to have 5 minus negative 3 divided by negative 1 minus negative 5. When I subtract a negative, that's really adding. So 5 plus 3 is 8. Divided by, when I subtract a negative, that's really adding. So negative 1 plus 5 is 4. The slope is equal to 2. What that gives me so far is y equals 2x plus b. And then I need to figure out what b is, but I can't do that until I put numbers in for x and y. Oh, you know what? This time I'll use these numbers, because it just does not matter which set you use. So y sub 2 is 5. So I'm going to say 5 equals 2 times negative 1 plus b. 5 equals negative 2 plus b. Add 2 to both sides. 7 equals b. So now I put it all together. Y equals mx plus b. Y equals m was positive 2. So y equals 2x and b was positive 7. Okay? Okay, and then we just do it again. We've got m equals y sub 2 minus y sub 1 divided by x sub 2 minus x sub 1. So I have xy, xy, my 1s, my 2s. I have 4 minus 4. And then in the denominator I have negative 5 minus negative 2. 4 minus 4 is 0. Subtract a negative is really adding, so negative 5 plus 2 is negative 3. 0 divided by any number is 0. So then I have y equals 0x plus b. If I substitute my values in, I'm going to have 4 equals 0 times negative 2 plus b. 0 times negative 2 is just 0. So I end up with 4 equals b. So I have y equals mx plus b. Y equals, the slope was 0. Now, 0x means 0 times x, and 0 times anything is just 0. So this is really just 0. But then I don't need to leave it like that either, because 0 plus any number is whatever that number was. Turns out that this would be a horizontal line, y equals 4. The way you can look at that is you can go, oh wait, the 4s that are in the position of y's did not change. Therefore the slope would be 0. And I would have x equals 4, I'm sorry, not x equals, y equals 4 as the equation. Okay, and the last one, I have m equals y sub 2 minus y sub 1 divided by x sub 2 minus x sub 1. I'm going to have 0 minus negative 1 divided by negative 5 minus negative 5. Okay, when I subtract a negative, I'm really adding it, so I have 0 plus 1. And when I subtract a negative, I really add it, so I have negative 5 plus 5. Oh, 1 divided by 0 is a no-can-do. It's undefined. Whenever you have something with an undefined slope, it means it starts with the letter x. There is no y value in it at all. And then how will you know what x value? Well, look at the values of x right here. They did not change, and they're both negative 5. So if one of the coordinates does not change, the equation is going to be which coordinate that was. So in this case, the x coordinates are not changing, and therefore it is x equals, and what will x equal? X will equal whatever that number is. And that's the equation for that line. The end.